Hello, everyone. We are so thrilled that you can join us today as we host our third webinar for our Parent Empowerment Speaker Series. We have a different speaker featured each Tuesday at 12 p.m. If you missed last week's webinar with Stacy Zinn from the DEA and Chris McClure from Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, be sure to go to mediasafety.org to view or to share the recording. This webinar is hosted by End Exploitation Montana. My name is Chelsea Winterholler, and I am the Director of Operations at End Exploitation Montana, and also your host. I do want to remind you that this presentation is intended for adults. We are immensely grateful to our sponsors for this event. We have such amazing community support. We want to specifically thank our champion sponsors, Billings Clinic, Brewer Dental Center, Billings Public Schools, Yellowstone Bank, St. Vincent Healthcare, and Rimrock Pediatric Dentistry. Research shows that parents are the most important protective factor in the safety of their children. And we want to strengthen and empower each of you that are here today. Our goal in this webinar series is to empower parents in making a positive difference in our youth. Today, we have the privilege to hear from Matt Leavenworth about raising mentally healthy kids. I just want to tell you a little bit about him and then I'll hand it on over. Matt has been a licensed counselor with Yellowstone Counseling Center since 2015. He is the vice chair of the Suicide Prevention Coalition of Yellowstone Valley. He graduated from Adams State University in 2015 with a Master of Arts degree in mental health counseling and is currently working towards his PhD in counselor education and supervision. He has extensive experience seeing children and adults dealing with a range of disorders, including anxiety, depression, and trauma. He has completed trainings in trauma-based cognitive behavioral counseling. And I think this is pretty cool. He uses rock climbing as a tool to empower and heal clients. He is currently offering groups for male and female teenagers, as well as individual programs that use rock climbing as an experimental template for growth and development. He has also developed the Pay Love Forward mentorship system and is certified in mentor coaching and leadership development through Grandview University. He is also an experienced rock climber himself, having completed multiple multi-day ascents in Yosemite, including El Capitan and Half Dome. He has a deep love for climbing, and he believes that the skills learned in this class translate to skills that operate in the real world. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to have you. I will just go ahead and turn it over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I feel so privileged to be here. That this is such an important thing that we're doing. That it is so essential to get resources and information out to our parents and our coaches and our mentors and our teachers, so that we can help our young people just realize their incredible potential. And so, I mean, a special thanks to End Exploitation Montana and Media Safety for putting this event on. I think this is something that we just absolutely have to keep doing to get good information out there for our young people. So we're going to talk about a few things here today, and I'm going to go pretty quickly, and we're going to pause at a couple of points in time to make sure you're getting some questions in that I can answer at the end or answer a little bit later. But the main objectives that I'm going to cover here today is we're going to take a look at what's really going on the ground. So we're going to look at the statistics. We're going to look at the experience, like what our young people are struggling with right now, and the signs and symptoms. And so I'm the vice chair of the Suicide Prevention Coalition of Yellowstone Valley, which is oftentimes why I get asked to speak at events like this. And so that's a big part of what we're going to talk about is suicide prevention. But for me, in my experience, is that suicide prevention is, that's an outcome. And I tend to think of mental health as like this tall building, right? And there's only so many mental health resources, and there's only so much room up there. And the more suffering and despair that we're experiencing in our community, like the more people just start kind of falling off of the edges. And so one of the things that is really a priority here too is first to look at the problems that we're facing, but then also to figure out what are the solutions. So I've been a mental health counselor for about 7-8 years now, and have just participated in so much growth and so much healing, that I believe that there's absolutely hope, and I believe in that hope, and I believe that we're going to talk about some things that are really things that you can implement in your life that will make your young person's life better and more meaningful. And so the first part of this presentation is kind of hard. It's a hard look at the statistics. It's a hard look at what our young people are going through, and then what to do to intervene on their behalf, especially if they're dealing with suicidality or significant depression or anxiety. And so the second part of the presentation then is going to be about compassionate listening and compassion and building compassionate communities and staying involved in compassionate communities. And for me, those are the answers that transcend. So I've been, and there's so many tools. Like mental health is such a complex field. I mean, there's addiction, there's the problems with internet exposure and pornography. I mean, there's so many things that we have to address. We have to think about it as parents that it's scary. But for me, these two things, compassionate listening and compassionate communities, they're the things that I've seen be most effective in counseling, and they're the things that we can absolutely go forward and implement for our young people. So the statistics on suicide, and these are hard. When I started looking at these statistics, they really took my breath away. I think they're a bit of a gut punch. So we lose about 50,000 lives to suicide every year, and especially since the pandemic and some of the mental health trends that have been taking place since then, these numbers are going up. We lost about 2,000 young people to suicide, and so it is the second leading cause of death for our young people. And that's what I mean. So when I think about suicide, I think it's like almost a barometer for the mental health in the community. Like it's the worst case outcome for what our young people are dealing with, which is depression, which is trauma, which is addiction, which is all of these different things. And when that goes untreated, then this is the awful end result. But for me, implementing these interventions, it's not just like we're just trying to prevent death. It's like, no, we're trying to prevent the suffering that this represents, as well as so 95,000 young people visited the emergency department for self-harm injuries, at a cost of about $70 billion a year, and so there's an enormous cost that goes well beyond just the stats. And for me, that's that suffering that I think that we absolutely need the tools, and there are the tools, and I truly deeply believe in hope and meaning and capacity for healing and change. And so in Montana, this is a more of an issue than it is elsewhere. So our suicide rate was 24.1 per 100,000 compared to 10.5, which is the national average. And there's a lot of reasons, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So these statistics were taken from, and this is an incredibly informative survey. So it's the Youth Risk Assessment Survey, and they talked to about 3,000 teenagers taken from 50 randomly selected schools. And this is what our young people are telling us right now. And it does. These are hard numbers to think about and to look at. So during the past 12 months, did you ever feel so sad or hopeless almost every day that you stopped doing your usual activities? And 41.4% of our young people are saying yes to that question. And so that's a question that I would use in counseling as a screening question for major depressive disorder. And 41.4% of our young people in 2021 are saying yes to that question. During the past 12 months, did you ever seriously consider attempting suicide? 21% said yes. So when we think about suicide prevention, which has kind of some scary connotations, we're talking about a fifth of our young people are struggling with this ideology and these ideations. Did you make a plan about how you would attempt suicide? 18% said yes. During the last 12 months, how many times did you actually attempt suicide? 10% said one or more times, and of those, 3.2% reported that the attempt resulted in an injury. And so this is what our young people are going through, and this is what they're telling us. And so this particular survey is a screening of risky behavior. So it's a very long survey, and it's much more detailed than what I'm presenting right now, but it's a fantastic piece of data, and it's really good data on what our young people are telling us. But have you been forced to have sexual intercourse when you did not want to? 10% said yes. How many times were you in a physical, or were you in a physical fight? But this actually breaks it down. Were you in a physical fight 1 or more times, 2 or more times, 3 or more times? But 23% of our young people are telling us yes, that they were in some kind of a physical altercation. 30 days, how many times did you use marijuana? How many times did you have a drink of alcohol? So this has probably not changed that much since I was young, but apparently our kids are drinking a lot of alcohol and smoking a lot of pot. But so I think about these, and so these statistics, and and I think there are these scary connotations. But for me, so I ask these types of questions like in practice all the time, like, are you feeling suicidal, or do you have a plan to hurt yourself? And for me, these aren't scary questions necessarily, because the human condition is not flawless. Like the human struggle it's a journey that we all go through, and all of us feel depressed at times, and all of us struggle with anxiety, and all of us probably at times have thought, man, I wish there was a way out. So when people are giving us the answers to these questions, they're just telling us that they're in pain, that they're struggling. But to me, that's so much a part of the human condition that I think all of us at some point in our lives would answer yes to a lot of those questions. And so for me, it's more about like, okay, all right, so we have to prevent this one specific outcome. We have to ensure that doesn't happen. We have to make sure, because that's the one problem we can't fix. But every other one of these problems, these are things that we can fix. And yeah, life's hard, and it's a struggle, but it's also beautiful, and it's also full of meaning, and it's so worthwhile. And we can get you to the other side of what it is that you're experiencing right now. And so to me, these statistics don't fill me with fear. They're information to diagnose a problem that I truly believe that we can go forward and fix. And so, and I need to move quick through because this is a lot of information, I realize, but these are some of the reasons that we have specific, like very high suicide rates in Montana specifically, and it's Wyoming and Colorado, and a lot of the mountain states have these particular trends. But one of the most important ones is that we have a lot of firearms in Montana. And I cannot emphasize this enough. So if you have a firearm in your home, it triples the risk of the completion of a suicide attempt. And so this is the second leading cause of death to our young people. And if you have a firearm in your home, it triples that particular risk. And I'm not advocating in any way to not have firearms. I'm absolutely pro Second Amendment. But as far as one thing that you can absolutely do to go home and limit the risks to your young person, to make sure this one catastrophic ending doesn't happen, the one thing that we can't solve, please lock up your firearms, lock your ammunition in a separate storage container, and make sure you're practicing safe storage. It's one of those things that can just make an enormous outcome, because suicide it's a response to untreated mental health and a crisis. And your teenager is notoriously not forthcoming, so they're really good at not telling you what's going on in their personal lives. And crises, they happen all the time, and they happen unpredictably. So those two variables are pretty unpredictable. So if we can take those steps to lock up the medications, to make sure firearms aren't accessible to our young people, even the young ones who've been hunting all of their lives, we can dramatically decrease, what is such a tragic statistic. So I'm going to share a video, and this is also just on the signs and symptoms, the things that you should be watching for. And I've got a couple slides after this that cover the same signs and symptoms, and then even some of the myths about suicide interventions that are just important to know when making sure we're keeping our young people safe. And somebody please let me know if you can't see this.
Just like anybody else.
Maybe more than anybody else.
I can be hard to figure out.
And I like my privacy. I don't want you looking over my shoulder all the time.
But you know your kid better than anybody else. And if you think he's acting different than usual,
acting really down, crying all the time for no good reason,
or getting really mad, not able to sleep, or sleeping too much,
shutting her friends out or giving her stuff away,
acting reckless, drinking, using drugs, staying out late,
suddenly not doing stuff he used to love,
or doing stuff that's just not like him.
It might be nothing to worry about. It might just be high school.
Or it might be something more. He might be depressed. Not just feeling down, really depressed.
It might be that your kid is thinking about killing himself. It happens more than you think, more than it should.
And people say, I had no idea.
I thought it was just a phase he was going through.
I never thought she'd do it.
I wish he'd come to me.
I wish he'd said something.
I wish I'd said something.
When it's too late. So if you think your kid's acting different, if she seems like a different person, say something.
Say, what's wrong? How can I help?
And ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself? It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, it helps.
When people are thinking about killing themselves, They want somebody to ask. They want somebody to care.
Maybe you're afraid you'll make it worse if you ask. Like, you'll put the idea in their head.
Believe me, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, the best way to keep a teenager from killing herself is to ask, are you thinking about killing yourself?
And what if they say yes?
Or maybe.
Or sometimes,
Well, here's what you don't say.
that's crazy.
Don't be such a drama queen.
You're making too much of this.
That boy's not worth killing yourself over. It's not going to solve anything.
You're just trying to get attention.
You're not going to kill yourself. What you do say is,
I'm sorry you're feeling so bad. How can I help? We'll get through this together.
Let's keep you safe.
a lot of people think about killing themselves, adults and kids. Most of them never try it, but some of them do. So if your kid says,
I'd be better off dead. I can't live with this.
I'm gonna kill myself, take her seriously. Find someone she can talk to about it. Someone who knows how to help.
Sometimes kids want to kill themselves because something happened. A breakup, a failure. But sometimes it goes deeper, and it's not going to go away by itself. Get some help. Talk to your doctor.
Or a counselor at school.
Or your minister.
But don't just let it drop.
And make sure that your kid always has someone to turn to. Someone he trusts. Make a list together, right then. 3, 4, 5 names.
Put a suicide hotline number on there too.
Have him keep that list in his wallet, so he always knows where to turn.
Make sure your home is safe. If you have pills she could use to hurt herself, lock them up.
If you have a gun, don't just lock it up. Get it out of the house. With bullets, too.
And one more thing. If you think your kid might be about to hurt himself, don't leave him alone.
Take him to the emergency room.
Call 911 if you have to.
We all have our ups and downs, but sometimes it's more than that.
If you think something's wrong, the only way to find out is to ask. Ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
Don't wait until you're sure. Trust your gut, because it never hurts to ask.
And it can make a big difference. All the difference. In your kid's life.
Well, it's such a powerful video. I think especially just kind of hearing that from their perspective, and there's so much evidence that goes into exactly what that video is describing, that we're supposed to ask. And I truly believe that a yes to that question, like, are you thinking about hurting yourself? It's not a scary, it doesn't have to be such a scary response. Like, there's just two parts of that. Like, okay, first of all, we're going to come up with a plan to make sure that isn't the outcome here. And then the second thing is, man, I hear that you're hurting. I hear that you're struggling, that you're suffering, and I'm with you here in that. And then we can move forward. And it's also a great way to start a conversation that can lead to some interventions that can really improve your young person's reality. So, and these are, especially if you're getting yeses to those kinds of questions, and there are some different levels to that. Like, are you thinking about it? Do you have a specific plan? And then are you intending to go and harm yourself? But and especially those latter questions, I have a plan and I intend to follow through with it. Your young person needs to go to the hospital or needs to get immediate help. But these are good numbers, because oftentimes it's a response to a crisis. So these are numbers to give your young person, especially if you're concerned about their mental health. So these are just some of the myths about it. And I think a lot of people are just scared to ask that question because they're scared of what happens if somebody says yes. Or that they're going to implant the idea in their young person's mind. And those things just, the research indicates that's just not true. You're not going to implant the idea in your young person's mind. It is a great way to initiate some interventions that can make all the difference and possibly even save a life. So I just want to pause here for just a second and maybe just reflect, because I know that's a lot of information and that's really hard information. But any questions that are coming to you, and I'm hoping we have plenty of time to answer some of those questions live, but if we don't have any time to answer those questions live, then I'm going to make sure that I respond to all of them and we'll upload those to the website. So just take 30 seconds and jot down or send in any questions that you have at this moment in time. And then we're going to turn this presentation into what we're going to do about this. And again, I am absolutely a believer in hope and healing. I've just seen so much of it over the course of my career to not think that there's incredible hope for our future and for our young people. So to me, the two primary answers, and I'm just going to give a little background about how young people develop healthy identities. So there's something in, I know Amy was one of the presenters earlier a couple weeks ago, and she talked about attachment theory. And attachment theory really tells us that our children need a secure base to go out and explore the unknown and go out and explore the world. And that secure base comes from their relationship with us, with their parents. And so the best example of this I can give is my daughter at the park with her mom. And so I watch her, and she'll wrap her arms around her mom's legs, and then eventually get enough courage. Like, she's soaking up courage that she'll then go venture out, and she'll go explore and talk to other kids and get involved with other kids until she starts to feel afraid again. And then she'll dart back to mom. And that same process becomes symbolic later on in life. Like, no longer are our kids latching onto our legs, but they're developing that secure sense of who they are. So then they can go out and explore the world in meaningful ways. And this is the best thing that we can do to ensure that bond is secure. And I call it the compassionate conversation. But this conversation needs to be a part of our diet as parents. It needs to be something that we're continually doing with our young people. And so, and I've kind of framed some of this stuff on the negative side, but it doesn't have to be like, so I've noticed you seem down, I'm worried about you. But it also could absolutely be like, man, I noticed you're really excited that you got some really good grades, or you scored the winning goal in your soccer practice. So this is something that needs to be part of our diet. And our young people are busy and they're shut down, and oftentimes they're not particularly forthcoming. So they might get their phone out, look at their phone, and ignore you. So it's important to follow up with that. If now is not a good time to talk, when? And then because you pin them down to a time when you're going to sit down and you're going to create some space to really listen to them, to really hear them. And then you open up that conversation, and you might have to do a little bit of extra prompting, like, boy, like we're going through divorce right now. I can only imagine that if I was in your shoes, I'd feel really torn in two. I'd feel like, man, my world is upside down right now. And so you have to maybe prompt them a little bit out of their shells. But usually when you do, kids, they're like fountains of information. And then our job at that point is just to listen, to really hear them where they're at. So I hear you telling me that the breakup you went through with your boyfriend is just devastating, that you thought you were in love, and now you don't know who you are. And you don't have to fix it, and you don't have to, like, there's no problem solving there. It's just like, I hear you, and I hear that you're in pain right now. That must be so hard for you. And then another point is just to clarify, make sure that you're hearing them correctly. And I found that again and again in counseling, that people won't really listen to me, or they won't take feedback from me, or they won't integrate what I'm saying until they're sure that I've heard their story. And so this conversation, like, you stay with them and you repeat them and you say, am I hearing you right, until you make sure that you're understanding them. And that takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes softness. And you may have to keep coming back to that conversation again and again, but you keep insisting on it. You keep insisting that space is a sacred space. So you're getting the cell phone out, you're turning off the TV. It's just you and them, and you're asking some hard questions of them, and then also being willing to, like, if you're worried about your child, like, ask that hard question. Do you feel suicidal? And that can just be an opening point for the conversation itself. Like, okay, let's talk about what to do about that. Like, what do we need to do to make your world better? And then just the conclusion of that conversation, like, I love you, I'm here for you, I'm going to keep checking in with you, like, we're going to keep doing this, I'm going to pursue you, and continue to create this space, and ensure that you know that you're loved. And that word, a message of hope too. We're going to get this figured out. And so and these are all things. So problem solving, telling, fixing, these are all actually parts of parenting. Like, I'm not saying not to do these things. I'm just saying that they're not part of this particular conversation. These things tend to happen after you really know where your young person is coming from. And so I've got kind of a fun video here that I want to play, but this is one of the better examples of what compassionate listening is not, and then what it is. So this clip is taken from the movie Inside Out.
No, you can't take my rocket to the nuts, Riley, and I go to the moon.
So in this movie, there are the characters that are in Riley's mind, and one of them is joy, and one of them is sadness. And joy is the one that keeps the personality kind of going forward, and sadness, they don't quite know what to do with her, what her purpose is. And Bing Bong is actually her the imaginary friend that she has to grow out of, kind of on her developmental path. But Bing Bong has just lost something that is sacred to him.
Riley can't be done with me.
gonna be okay. We can fix this. We just need to get back to headquarters. Which way to the train station?
I had a whole trip planned for us.
Hey, who's ticklish, huh? Here comes the tickle monster. Hey, Bing Bong, look at this. Oh, here's a fun game. You point to the train station and we all go there. Won't that be fun? Come on, let's go to the train station.
I'm sorry they took your rocket. They took something that you loved. It's gone forever.
Sadness. Don't make him feel worse.
Sorry.
It's all I had left of Riley.
I bet you and Riley had great adventures.
Oh, they were wonderful. Once we flew back in time, we had breakfast twice that day.
Sadness.
It sounds amazing. I bet Riley liked it.
Oh, she did. We were best friends.
Yeah. Sad.
I'm okay now. Come on. The train station is this way.
Well, I love that video. To me, it's so incredibly powerful because first it exhibits what I think a lot of us do. We try and go in there and we try and solve the problem, and then also what we need to do, which is just to get down on their level and get down on and hear what it is that they're telling us. And I love the end of that video when so Joy is so desperately just like, we need to go, we gotta go solve this problem, and it's only when Bing Bong the character is really hurt. That he then gets up and actually then goes and solves the problem they need to solve. And I've just found this again and again in my counseling sessions that, man, when I listen to people, when I create sacred space for our young people, they go out and they solve their problems in incredibly meaningful ways. And so, I mean, that to me, that's the power of this. Like our young people, man, they're so resilient. They're so smart. They're so talented. And they have within them the capacity to go solve their problems. And maybe they have that in them in ways that we don't have, because we're kind of old and out of touch, and they know what's going on in their world so much better than we do. And so when they're heard and when they have that secure base, they go out and they do some just incredible things. So the second component of, and these are the things that I really hope you take out of this presentation, is one to create that space to listen to your young people and not in problem solving ways. But the second is that we have to get our young people involved in what I call compassionate communities, and they're just healthy communities, and they could be sports, they could be speech and debate, they could be drama, they could be anything, but we'll talk a little bit about what that means, but that this is such an essential component of their development. So I wanted to give you kind of some background psychology. So Eric Erickson, he's a psychologist, talks about the stage that your teenager is in, and it's identity versus role confusion. So, and to me, this was one of the most poignant discoveries when I started working with young people, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to find out who they are. And if they don't find out who they are, they have what's called social moratorium, which is they just don't know. They're trying on all these different, almost like costumes, different hats. And I think this is so explanatory that we see our young people, they wake up one day and they're like painted black, like in Gothic. And then they wake up the next day and they're like a prep, and you're just like, I cannot keep up with this. But that's what they're doing. They're trying on all of these different potential identities, trying to find the one that's true to who they are. And so this idea of freedom and guardrails. And so there's a concept that I absolutely love by a guy named Talib called anti-fragility. And he did a lot of work on this word. So anti-fragility is like your immune system. Your immune system actually gets stronger through failure. It gets stronger through exposure to sickness. And so we actually want our young people to fall down and scrape their knees. We actually want our young people to go try something and fail. Because that actually strengthens them as they learn through those experiences, rather than just keeping them safe, keeping them locked inside and keeping all the things that we're so afraid of away from them. So that's what we're really hoping to do is give them the freedom to find out who they are and make mistakes, but also put some guardrails around that. So I talk to my young kids all the time. I tell them, I talk to them about safe sex. If they don't know how to put a condom on, I'll absolutely tell them how. I talk about, marijuana is one thing. There's potential for addiction there, but like pain pills and Xanax and some of these things you're finding in the medicine cabinets, that they'll not only get you addicted, but they'll kill you. And so there's a number of things like, don't drink and drive. Like these are activities that have consequences that far outweigh any information you can gain by exploring them. And so those are the guardrails. So we want our young people to go out and discover who they are, but we need to make sure they do that without some of the catastrophic consequences that are potentially out there. And so, you know, I think that we're in a very unique time, and that technology is expanding so incredibly rapidly that it confuses this process of our young people running back to their moms or dads and feeling attached and safe, and then running back out into the world to go explore and figure out who they are, because the world has just gotten so big so quickly. And there are it is a global community where there is anything and everything out there that they have at the click of their thumb. And so we're a long way from growing up in a small town where you married the girl who sat next to you in your math class, and you worked on your parents' farm or inherited your family business. Now we can go anywhere and we can do anything and we can meet anybody, and our young people are entering into that globalized world before they have the skills necessary. I mean, and we're seeing really scary statistics, like the average exposure to pornography is at about 8 years old. So your 8-year-old who has no concept of sex whatsoever is encountering it in a really radical way at a point in time when they're not developmentally capable of integrating that information. And so to me, we have to be involved in our young people's social life on the internet. We have to monitor it. We have to ensure that there are some of those guardrails. And I think we have to educate ourselves. And so, I don't have time in this presentation to talk about all the things, but we do a lot of we've done the Screenagers event in the past, and that's such an amazing event, but it's a specific event about how to keep your young person safe in this world where there is so much access to everything. But I just think about what this is doing to our young people. And so even Facebook, and this affects me too. I have this same experience. I'm constantly comparing my real self, which I'm very aware of my real self because I have to live in my brain all the time, to everybody else's best self, or the only thing that they're putting online, which is them on vacation, or the Kardashians, or whatever it is. And so there's this constant feedback, like myself who gets pimples and doesn't feel very good or is sleep deprived, and all those things compared to the best version of everybody else, and what that does to your self-esteem if you're constantly digesting that information. And then maybe my last one, and it's one of my personal enemies, is Snapchat. I absolutely despise Snapchat, and my child will never have Snapchat. And there's a couple of reasons. One is because it's intended to hide information. So you can send a picture of yourself and that picture disappears. Another is there's you can locate where other people are at all times. So when your young person doesn't get invited to a party, they can pull up their phone and see all of their friends invited to that same party. So that exclusion is following them home. So when they're up in their rooms, on a Friday night, they may be literally staring at a party that they just didn't get invited to. And so, and not to mention the reverse of that other people get to know where they are. So, but there's, and I also am not anti-technology by any means. I think technology is an incredible thing, and offers communities that we wouldn't have access to otherwise. And there's so much potential for healing and for connection. But it's something that we really have to think through, and we have to be wary of. And the technology is just evolving faster and faster, and it's evolving more quickly than I think a lot of parents feel like they can keep up with. I'm very worried about VR technology because I get so motion sick. So I'm gonna try and monitor the VR world that my daughter's gonna inherit, and I'm probably gonna be barfing the whole time. But technology is rapidly advancing, and I think that's probably a daunting task for all of us. So that's certainly on the educational front, something that mental health professionals, we need to keep up with. But these last couple of slides are just on this idea. And so my daughter, she won't, I'm never going to tell her what she needs to be involved in, but she has to be involved in something. And we're social creatures. We're biologically programmed to seek out communities. And if we don't find healthy ones, we'll find unhealthy ones. It is just it's a byproduct of our reality. And so I think of what the gang is. The gang is a bunch of lost kids who have bonded together to develop social cohesion because they're lost and they don't have anything to attach to that's healthy. And so I just can't encourage you as parents enough to insist that your young person is involved in something. We don't have to tell them what it is. But just that knowledge that they're going to go find a community online, and that community is probably not going to be as healthy as it could be otherwise, or they're going to get involved in a gang or just a social group that has a value system and a hierarchy embedded into it that may be based on violence and maybe based on sexual promiscuity and some things like that. And those are the morals that your kid is going to adopt. So, I think like learning to be involved in the social lives of our young people and put on those guardrails while still allowing freedom. But so to me, and we're going to wrap up here in just a second, to me, a healthy community it's a community with shared values. It's a community that's come together cohesively for a shared purpose. And also generally has some adult interaction, has some access to a role model or a healthy community leader involved in it, not like overseeing or micromanaging, but that there is that component of, hey, this is an example of it, what it looks like to be a compassionate and kind person. And so I can't encourage you enough. So these are just kind of a list of places that you can go. There's so much out there. There's so many good things out there to get your young person involved in it and stay after them. Make sure that they have something, because they're going to formulate something, and we have to be involved in that process to make sure it's healthy and connected, and that there is a healthy value system there. And so I run Pay Love Forward, and this has been kind of my project, is to find ways to build these healthy communities anywhere and everywhere I can. But the one that I currently run every month, and it's open to the public, so anybody can come to this. And it is a mentor-based model, so it's 8 to 18. So the objective is that our 18-year-olds care for our 8-year-olds, and our 16-year-olds care for our 14-year-olds, and then there are healthy role models. And we're also like very family-friendly. So if you come to this, we absolutely want parents to come as well. And we climb and we eat pizza, and we talk about what it means to have a service mindset and to emphasize compassion and connection. And then we climb and we eat pizza. And so it's pretty simple. It's super fun. We do it at Steep World the third Saturday of every month. Pay Love Forward is also, we do a lot of mentor coach training, and the headwaters of mentor coaching is compassionate listening. So a lot of the courses that we teach are really compassionate listening courses. And it's under that belief that if you create that space, if you listen and you care about somebody, that those answers come to them and they're their answers and they own those answers. And so those are some things that at least I'm involved with, but this is more just listen, like these are those two things, like listen to your kids, build in that kind of a conversation into their lives, and then get involved in ensuring that they have healthy outlets where there are good people involved. I think that's all I have. So I think we can turn whatever time we have left over for questions and answers.
Awesome. Wow, Matt, that was just wonderful. Highlighting suicide prevention, I and all of us at End Exploitation Montana truly feel is key to helping our youth and helping members of our community thrive. So thank you so much for that powerful presentation. Hearing this statistics at the beginning, and then having you provide us all with tools to alleviate the suffering, that was just so helpful. Thank you. I am going to go ahead and grab questions from the Q&A. So please remember that links to the videos and the resources that Matt has shared will be posted on our website, mediasafety.org. And then if you want your question to be anonymous, please click send anonymously.
And I'll spend some time with those questions too. So if I don't have time to answer some of these questions, and if somebody's coming here and listening to this and I'll spend some time with it and make sure you get some good answers.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so the first one I want to ask is, how do you work through children failing or create situations for them to fail so that when they do fail when they're older, they're not completely devastated by it?
I mean, that's such a powerful question. That's such an important question. And, I mean, to me, I think keeping them involved in life, like getting them involved in sports, getting them involved in those kind of communities where because failure isn't necessarily failure. I mean, failure is a route to growth. And so, I mean, that's exactly right, is we have to create those environments where they fail, but it's like failing forward, and so when they fall down, when their team loses, or when they get done with that season where they literally lost every single game, I had one of those. It was terrible. It's horrible, but like the message at the end of that day is that that there are still so many core values and so many important things that are happening there. Like you're there for your team and you're connected as a team, and you can do this for the love of the game. And certainly my hope is that your child doesn't have too many seasons where they're losing every game. But I think just getting your kids out there and getting them involved and signing up as a coach or signing up as a mentor, or just there are plenty of opportunities for your child to fail.
For sure, it's just getting them out there.
And school and those things are, if your child is involved in the community, those things are actively happening. And because you watch little kids play, and they're intensely acting out the things that they need to learn to survive as an adult. There's a million betrayals. There's a million, they punch it, they hit each other. It's hardcore. And they're out there in that social milieu, testing themselves and finding out what works. And so, school's hard, you're going to get bad grades and some things like that. So I tend to think that those opportunities for failure, if we don't over shelter our kids, they're failure plus growth, though, because I think that's the essential component of that, is that we're there. And that's part of that listening piece. Like, you just get down and that hurt, that sucked when you went through that season and lost every single game. But man, am I proud of you for sticking that out.
For sure. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. You kind of answered this, but I feel like it is such a common question that we get as well, that I'm going to have you answer it again. What if the phone is causing a teenager distress and they battle with you in taking it away? How do you take it away when they say they will hurt themselves if you take their phone?
Absolutely. So, that's a really good question too. And certainly I've heard that question from a lot of parents as well. So, the first thing is, I think you want to have a strategy in place for what happens if your child uses that as a threat. And I think that's a no. Like, you are not allowed to threaten hurting yourself in our house. Like, you can be mad at me, you can throw a fit, you can punch a pillow, you can do lots and lots of things. But the second you say you're going to hurt yourself, I'm going to take that really seriously. So I'm going to take your phone. And if you're going to threaten that, then we're going to go to the hospital. Then we're going to activate the stages in our plan, which are to keep you safe, because I'm going to keep you safe. And so, that's back to that screenagers question, which I think that would be a whole presentation of how to limit screen time and how to put limitations on that, how to make sure you have the password to your kid's phone, because there's just too much power in that device for somebody at the level of maturity that your teenager is at. So you have to be involved in that. And so I think calling that bluff, your teenager is using that as manipulation, and it's really effective manipulation because it's so scary for parents. Like, the second they hear that, but you follow through on your end. All right, you're going to keep saying that, then we're going to go to the ER and you're going to wait there for 7 hours, which is what's going to happen. And then they're going to ask you a bunch of horrible questions, and then they're going to release you because your kid actually isn't suicidal and is just threatening, or maybe he is, in which case, thank God you're there. But it's a really unpleasant experience. And I promise you, if you follow that through, or maybe your other intervention is fine, you're going in your room and I'm going to watch you. I'm going to take your, whatever it is, but as soon as it's a threat of self-harm, that's when you draw a hard line. And this is serious, and you don't get to say those things. If you mean them and if you're serious about them, then we're going to do whatever it is to keep you safe and to love you.
I love that. I got chills when you said, I am going to keep you safe and I'll do whatever it takes. So I think just giving that love to them will help them see. Awesome. I know we are out of time. I am going to ask you one more question though, because I think it's important for everyone to hear. What if a child is not thinking about killing themselves, but they are engaging in self-harm?
I tend to think of those things as kind of one and the same. And the self-harm one is a really hard one. I've worked with so many kids. It sticks around. It's hard to but I think I tend to think of, and it's the same with attention-seeking behavior that we like to kind of be dismissive of, but it can just be lethal. Your kid is seeking attention, and so they decide to swallow a bunch of pills. That can be just as lethal as if they just swallowed a bunch of pills because they really wanted to die. And so to me, that's again in that category of I'm just going to I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep you safe. And and everything else, even with the phone, it's the second they say, okay, I'm not going to kill myself, it kicks it back into the realm of just consequence and reward. Okay, if you prove that you're trustworthy, then you're going to get your phone back. And because that's one reality, but the reality where there are these scary outcomes on the line is a reality where I think a parent has to kind of take total control of that. I'm going to stay up all night and I'm going to stare at you, because I'm worried that you're going to hurt yourself. And I'm worried about your safety. And as soon as your safety is on the line, that just changes the dynamic of the conversation. And to me, self-harm just falls in that same category, where that's that hard line that we have to draw. And I'm not pretending that is easy. And especially if there's self-harm on the line, talk to your pediatrician and talk to a like get your young person into counseling, because that's a really serious thing that you may need a team, and you may need a lot of support, and you may need something. It's like I'm in this with you guys. Like I have a little one and a 3-year-old, and like these are my battles too. And we love our kids, and so we're gonna do what it takes to keep them safe.
Yeah, definitely. Matt, I really can't thank you enough. I have been looking forward to your presentation, and you did not fall short. I feel like I got statistics, and I also have just some amazing tools going forward to help not only my own kids, but our communities. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for attending this. And please, and like, I think I put my email in the, like, this is our community. Like, and we got to fight for these kids. So get a hold of me if you want to be part, like, get a hold of me if you have questions, if you want to be part of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. That's all the time we have for today, but I did want to invite you all to join us next week. It's Tuesday, April 26th at noon. It will be our last webinar for this series, and we'll be talking about protecting children from online exploitation. So a lot of what Matt went over today, or wanted to go over today, but wasn't able to, we'll be doing that next week, and that will be with Brittany Homer. We are really excited about that. So invite a friend to join us. You can send them to mediasafety.org to sign up. And just a reminder, the videos will be posted to our website. The resources that he has shared will be posted to our website as well, and you will get an email with that information when it is ready. Thank you again to our champion sponsors, Rimrock Pediatric Dentistry, Billings Public Schools, St. Vincent Healthcare, Billings Clinic, Yellowstone Bank, and Brewer Dental Center. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.